this episode, we are going to make application decisions feel much more practical by looking at them the way a support technician should. New learners often think installing software is easy because from the user side it can look like a few clicks and a short wait. The harder part is deciding whether that application belongs on that device in the first place, whether the system can support it comfortably, whether the user has the right permissions, and whether installing it will create more support work later. A technician is not just helping someone get a program onto a screen. A technician is deciding whether that program fits the operating system, OS, the hardware, the user's job, and the larger environment around the device. Once you understand application support this way, software installation stops being a simple yes or no task and becomes a judgment about compatibility, performance, stability, and long-term support impact. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A good starting point is to remember that every application makes demands on a system, even if those demands are not obvious at first. Some applications need a lot of processing power, some need a lot of storage, some need steady network access, and some need the device to have certain features such as a camera, microphone, or modern graphics support. A beginner should think of software as something that moves into a shared home. The program is not arriving on an empty computer. It is arriving on a machine that already has an OS, other applications, background services, updates, security tools, user data, and limited resources. That means a good application decision begins by asking whether the device has enough room, enough speed, and enough stability to carry one more workload without making the whole system uncomfortable to use. Support gets much easier when technicians stop thinking only about whether the installer can finish and start thinking about whether the device can live with the application afterward. Compatibility is one of the biggest reasons application decisions matter so much. A program may sound useful, popular, or business critical, but that does not guarantee it belongs on every machine. It may only support certain OS versions, certain processor types, or certain device classes. It may work well on a desktop with plenty of memory and storage while performing badly on an older laptop that already struggles with normal daily work. It may also rely on other software pieces in the background, such as frameworks, services, or support components that must already be present or must be added during installation. For beginners, the key lesson is that compatibility is not just about whether the file opens. It is about whether the application, the OS, the hardware, and the user's workflow all line up in a way that produces a dependable experience. If one of those pieces does not fit, the program may install successfully and still become a support problem almost immediately. This is why technicians should separate possible from practical. It may be technically possible to install an application on a device that barely meets the minimum requirements, but that does not mean it is a good support decision. A laptop with very limited random access memory, or RAM, low available storage, and an older processor may still accept the installation, but the user may end up with a sluggish system, long launch times, constant freezing, or poor battery life. From the user's point of view, the computer will simply feel broken or low quality. The technician may know the application caused the strain, but the user often only experiences the result. Good support means thinking ahead. If the device is already close to its limits, adding a demanding application may create more harm than value. That is why a technician's role is not just to ask whether the software can run. The better question is whether the software can run well enough for the user to do their work without turning the whole machine into a source of frustration. Storage is one of the easiest device limits to understand, but it is often underestimated. Users may only look at the installer size and assume that if the installer is small, the application must be light. In reality, the application may require much more space once it is fully installed, updated, and used over time. It may create caches, logs, downloaded content, temporary files, user profiles, and working data that continue to grow. That matters because low storage affects more than just the new application. A device that runs low on space may struggle with updates, become slower during normal use, and create odd errors that seem unrelated to storage at first. A beginner technician should think about installation as something that changes the system's future, not just its present. If the software will push the machine too close to full storage, that decision may reduce stability for the entire device and increase support calls later when other functions start failing for reasons the user does not connect back to the installation. Processor and memory needs matter just as much, even though users often notice them in less direct ways. A user may not say the computer is short on CPU time or memory. They will say the machine freezes, gets loud, takes forever to switch between windows, or becomes unusable whenever a certain app is open. This is where technicians need to think like translators. The application may be asking the system to do more than the device can provide comfortably, and the user experiences that as slowness, heat, fan noise, and poor responsiveness. Some software is very light and fits almost anywhere, while other software is more demanding because it handles large media files, heavy browser content, design work, analysis tasks, or constant background syncing. A beginner should remember that every installed application competes with everything else already running. The device does not care that the new program is important to the user. It still has to divide limited resources among all active tasks, and when that balance goes bad, the whole user experience suffers. Permissions are another major part of application decisions, and beginners should see them as a safety issue as much as a convenience issue. Not every user should be allowed to install any software they want on every device. If every machine allows unrestricted installation, support becomes harder very quickly because systems begin to drift apart, unknown tools get added, and risky or unnecessary applications appear in places where they do not belong. At the same time, technicians should not treat permissions as pointless barriers. Some users need access to install business tools, update approved software, or add specific components that help them do their jobs. The real question is whether the installation fits the role of the user and the role of the machine. A family computer, a company laptop, a school lab device, and a point-of-sale terminal should not all follow the same software freedom model. Good support means matching installation rights to the environment instead of assuming more freedom is always better or that tighter control is always more professional. User account control, UAC, on Windows and similar permission prompts on other systems are useful examples of that balance. These prompts can feel annoying to users because they interrupt the flow of getting something done, but they serve an important purpose. They slow down changes that affect the whole machine and make it clear that the action is not just an ordinary daily task. That matters because application installation often touches shared parts of the OS, changes settings, adds services, and affects other users on the device. A beginner technician should not think of permission prompts as proof that the system is being difficult. They are a signal that the software is asking to make meaningful changes. The technician's job is to decide whether those changes are appropriate, whether the application is trusted, and whether the machine should be carrying that software at all. When permissions are handled thoughtfully, the system stays more predictable and support becomes easier because software changes happen for clear reasons instead of through constant casual approval. Trust is also a big part of application selection. A program may be compatible and may fit the device's resources, but that still does not mean it should be installed. Technicians need to think about where the software came from, whether it is approved for use in that environment, how well supported it is, and whether it creates security or privacy concerns. A user may want a tool because it is free, because a friend recommended it, or because it solves one quick problem, but the long-term support impact may be much larger. Poorly maintained software can break after updates, create conflicts with other tools, introduce adware-like behavior, or expose the system to unnecessary risk. The beginner lesson here is simple. Software choice is not only about features. It is also about trust, supportability, and how likely that application is to behave well over time. If a technician installs something just because it appears useful in the moment, they may be creating a long support trail that could have been avoided with a more careful choice. Application removal matters for the same reason. Beginners sometimes think uninstalling software is just the opposite of installing it, but removal decisions can be just as important. An application that no longer serves a purpose still takes up space, may continue to update, may leave background tasks running, or may confuse the user if it stays visible after the business need has passed. Extra software also makes troubleshooting harder because every additional application is another possible source of conflict, slowness, notifications, syncing behavior, or update failures. A technician should treat software cleanup as part of maintaining a healthy system, not as an optional step. If a device is crowded with old utilities, duplicate tools, trial software, or programs the user no longer understands, the machine becomes harder to support because the real purpose of each application is no longer clear. Removing what is no longer needed is one of the simplest ways to reduce clutter, improve stability, and lower the number of variables involved when a user later reports a problem. This leads to a very important support habit, which is choosing one good tool instead of many overlapping tools whenever possible. Users often collect multiple applications that do nearly the same job. They may have several document viewers, several video meeting tools, several backup helpers, or several security-related utilities because each one solved one moment of need. Over time, that creates clutter and confusion. File associations may become inconsistent, update reminders may multiply, notifications may pile up, and different applications may compete for the same resources or permissions. A beginner technician should not measure value by the number of programs installed. In most environments, a simpler software set is easier to teach, easier to document, and easier to support. When one approved and well-understood application can do the job, adding two more alternatives usually increases support volume instead of improving user success. Good application decisions, therefore, include not only what to add, but what to avoid adding because the system already has a reasonable solution. Business impact is another important part of this topic because software decisions affect more than one user sitting at one desk. In a work environment, an application can shape training time, licensing cost, compatibility with shared files, support workload, security posture, and how easily one technician can help many users at once. If every employee chooses different tools for the same task, the environment becomes harder to manage and harder to teach. Shared documents may not look the same, workflows may break between departments, and the support team may spend more time learning software differences than solving user problems. A beginner should understand that the best application is not always the one with the most features. Sometimes the best application is the one that fits the device limits, works with the business process, has predictable licensing, and is familiar enough that users can get help quickly when something goes wrong. Application choices create ripple effects, and those ripple effects matter a lot in any organization that depends on stable daily work. Licensing and account dependence also matter more than beginners often expect. An application may install without trouble and still fail as a real business tool if the user cannot activate it properly, sign in with the right account, or maintain access over time. Some software depends heavily on cloud licensing, subscriptions, or identity-based access. That can be helpful when managed well, but it also means support includes more than installation. A technician may need to think about who owns the license, what happens when the user changes roles, whether the app can function offline, and whether the right person has permission to use the service. These questions reduce support problems later because they prevent situations where the software appears to be present but is not actually usable. Beginners improve quickly when they realize that successful application support is not finished when the icon appears on the desktop. It is finished when the user can open the application, access the needed features, and continue using it in a stable and supported way. Compatibility with the user's actual work is just as important as compatibility with the device. An application may technically run well and still be the wrong choice if it does not fit the task, creates a steep learning curve, or does not work smoothly with the files, formats, or collaboration tools the user already relies on. For example, a lightweight program may seem perfect for an older device, but if it cannot open the file types the team uses every day or cannot work with the broader workflow of the business, it may create more support effort than it saves. The same is true for very powerful software that includes many advanced features, but overwhelms a beginner user who only needs a few simple tasks. Good application selection matches three things at once: the device, the person, and the work. If one of those is ignored, the technician may still complete the installation successfully while setting the user up for confusion, repeated help requests, or avoidable incompatibility with the rest of the environment. A very practical way to think through application choices is to ask a short series of simple questions before installing anything. What problem is this software meant to solve? Does the device have the storage, memory, and performance headroom to support it? Does the OS version support it well? Does the user have the right permissions and the right business reason for having it? Is the software trusted, supported, and appropriate for the environment? Will it duplicate tools the system already has or add new conflicts? What happens later when it needs updates, licensing, support, or removal? These are not advanced questions. They are the normal thinking habits that stop technicians from creating trouble in the name of helping quickly. Beginners often want to solve the immediate request fast, but strong support comes from knowing that the fastest install is not always the best install. A few careful questions early can save a great deal of cleanup, retraining, and frustration later. When you step back from this whole topic, a clear pattern appears. Good application decisions reduce support problems because they keep systems lighter, more predictable, and more aligned with real needs. Bad application decisions do the opposite. They crowd devices that already have limited resources, introduce compatibility trouble, create security and permission issues, confuse users with overlapping tools, and leave the support team dealing with software that never should have been there in the first place. A beginner technician does not need to become suspicious of every new application, but they do need to become thoughtful. Software is not just a feature list. It is a new demand on the device, a new responsibility for the user, and a new support burden for the environment. When you understand that, installation work becomes less about adding programs and more about shaping a system that remains useful, stable, and easier to support over time. By the end of this episode, the main lesson should feel clear and practical. Technicians choose, install, and remove applications best when they think about compatibility, permissions, trust, device limits, workflow fit, and business impact all at once. A good installation is not just one that finishes. It is one that leaves the device stable, the user productive, and the environment easier to support. A good removal is not just cleanup. It is a way to reduce clutter, reduce conflicts, and simplify the machine. Resource needs matter because storage, memory, and processing limits shape whether software can run comfortably. Permissions matter because application changes affect the whole system. Business impact matters because one software choice can influence training, licensing, security, and support effort long after installation day. When beginners learn to think this way, they stop treating application support as simple software setup and start making decisions that protect both the user's work and the long-term health of the device.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.